Welcome once again to another discussion segment on development focus with Gideojo on ITV this morning. My next guest is practically an household name, I should say, in Nigeria electoral circle. If you are very conversant with the electoral elections and the electoral environment, in the last 2 decades or more, Oluwole Osazeuzi, immediate past director of the biggest department in INEC, that is voter education, gender, civil society, and publicity, has been around, working assiduously to ensure that Nigeria gets over the challenge of our election debacle. It's a pleasure and honor, sir, to have you on development focus with Gideojo this morning.
Thank you very much, Jide. Good morning, viewers.
Sir, you are a lawyer, an administrator, a former lecturer. I don't know whether you've gone back to lecturing now that you were formerly lecturing at the law department in University of Benin. You studied abroad in UK, and quite a number of people didn't know so much about you. Just that you shuttle media houses trying to project the image of the commission in the last 7-10 years, while when you assume the headship of the VEP department. But before VEP, you were in international cooperation. You were also director of legal services over 15 years ago in INEC before your recent retirement from service. Walk us through, what were your motivations? What led you even to studying law? Why law of all discipline?
Thank you very much, Jide. Well, maybe it's easier to answer why not law.
But there are several other disciplines you could have studied. Maybe
there are two, maybe three. There's law, there are the others.
Yeah. So anyway, don't let us be envious of you. Anyway, you've made a success of your legal. You were in legal practice, then you went into, then you came into the commission, and now you are back to legal practice. How has it been juggling all of these? Private sector, public sector, lecturing, adding that into the mix. What makes you tick? And actually, what are the things that drives you in your service to the nation?
Thank you, Jide. First of all, I find it very, let's say, odd talking about myself, because you said something earlier on. It's not so much about me, it's about the process, it's about governance, it's about the country, really. I actually did not intend to go into public service, but I've been very richly rewarded for going into public service. Not so much for financially, not at all. I think I'm worse off for it. But I think the basic motivation is that in 1999, after the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) was constituted, the pioneer chairman, late Justice Ephraim Akpata, was looking for somebody to assist him in his onerous responsibilities, and he commissioned me to assist in getting somebody who he thought could assist, and that's how it all happened. And each time we made a recommendation that, I'm thinking of Mr. A or Mr. B or Miss this or Dr. This. He also had one thing or the other to say, I don't know him so well, but I'm not too sure about his integrity, or yeah, he has good integrity and pedigree and everything else, but I don't know how smart he is and things like that. Cut a long story short, a few days after I was appointed, I said, the courts are on vacation, why don't you just come to Abuja and see me and see my new surroundings? And I did, and the next thing I knew is that he said, didn't you come with a suit? Because I was casually dressed. I said, yes, I just brought a jacket. I said, okay, put it on, let's go and see my new office. That's how it started, and that's how I got into.
You are more or less conscripted,
as it were, indeed.
Then you served, the Justice Ephraim Akpata of blessed memory, then the Dr. Igbe Gobadia. Right. So you've actually been there from the beginning of INEC, 1999. That is correct. That's 21 years you've put in public service.
Almost 22.
No, almost 22. Now, I mean, when I tell our viewers, you can't get someone better than you with institutional memory of INEC actions, inactions, activities over the last 2 decades. We have run 6 general elections from 1999, 2003, 2007, 2011, 2015, 2019.
Yes.
Now, what is your overall assessment of our electoral trajectory?
Let me put it this way: we've come a long way. We've come a long way. In some regards, regrettably, the more things change, the more they remain the same. The election management body, INEC, is always trying to be one step ahead of the politicians, the political class. There's what we call, for example, scientific rigging. Unfortunately, people have always been involved in trying to usurp the powers of the commission, trying to, by subterfuge and every other means, to ensure that people's vote doesn't count and things like that. Sometimes politicians try to outdo each other in the game, and INEC officials are sometimes conscripted. Security agents are often conscripted as well. So it's a culture is building up. I hope that you don't have to win by fair and foul means. There are rules of engagement, and we should try to stick by those rules. And not just the political class, but as I mentioned, the security agencies, the election management body, and all stakeholders have to do what is right and in accordance with the rules. If you don't like the rules, then we can change the rules in good time before any process actually starts, so that you're not shifting the goalposts halfway through the match, that kind of a thing. It's an evolving process that has evolved a great deal from when first started in 98, by the way, because local government elections were conducted by INEC in December of 1998, which led to the formation of political party threshold issues for formation of political parties, and then on to before the 1999 constitution actually came into force, because Decree 17 of 1998 actually established INEC. But now the establishment is entrenched in the constitution, which came into force in May of 1999. So things have changed, but certain bad habits have not really shifted. Methodology for them has shifted. Each time we say things, we try to evolve, we try to bring things to counter things, but sometimes the solutions to the challenges you find are almost as bad as the challenge itself, or it's so abused that it becomes a lot more difficult, and you begin to wonder, why do we do this? Let me take one, for example. We had voting. Initially, we started with you vote, you go. First of all, even before INEC, you had a NECON and A4 and open ballot. We saw that open ballot, it looked transparent, but the world had moved on. Open ballot was not exactly the most democratic. It led to intimidation, and that's its own challenges. But we saw the transparency of that process. So we said, let us do it open ballot system. Then we went to the modified open ballot system. Then we had then it was a simultaneous accreditation and voting. Then we went from there and said, no, let us do separate. Your credits, so that people don't go from one vote and start roaming from one polling to the other. We now said, okay, no, accredit first, at 1 o'clock come back and vote and things like that. When we brought in technology with the card reader, we saw you could actually accredit and vote, and people cannot go and with multiple cards go to different polling units. So these are the evolving processes. Taking you back to the First Republic, for example, you had pregnant voters, men, women, who will go and very big, very agbada like yours, and then by the time they come out, they're slim thin, because it's a secret ballot. They will go and take so many ballots and stuff the ballot box and things like that. So you see, each time it has been evolving. It can only get better, I think. It can only get better. But what now we have twin issue that research have shown is vitiating our election, if I can use the word vitiate, which is a weakness, perceived weakness, that's election violence and vote buying. How has the Commission tackled this twin problem? And do you think they have overcome? You see, when you ask the question, what has the Commission done, then you are narrowing it a little bit too much. You're thinking that the INEC superintends every area of the process. But you see, you have security agencies. Their duty is to ensure obedience, compliance with the laws. Each stakeholder has its own responsibility. What has INEC done about electoral violence? What should INEC be doing? Can INEC act alone? INEC, part of its responsibility is not keeping the country safe or keeping voters safe. That's not its responsibility. But because it's the main election management body, it behoves on it to ensure that working with other stakeholders, the Constitution established INEC. It also established other agencies with different jurisdictions and responsibilities. So, for example, security is that of the security agencies, and there are a number of them. In election security, the police is the leading security agents. Well, generally, they have the role to superintend the process of ensuring compliance with the laws. So, INEC works with the police and other security agencies in terms of stemming election violence. We work with the political class, the politicians, and say, look, there are laws for this. You must comply with the laws. Violence is violence. So you have punishment in the criminal code and the penal code, ordinary violence. Violence on election day is still violence. If you kill somebody on election day, it's still murder. The fact that on election day doesn't even make it. There are certain offenses that are stipulated in the Electoral Act, which are both offenses under the Electoral Act and offenses under the normal criminal codes of the land, or penal code of the land. So INEC should, and I think it does continue. That's why it's set up an extra ministerial and agency consisting of INEC and several of the agencies involved in electoral security. The Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security, for example. It's not in any law, but it's an initiative of the Commission to drive that process of election-related violence. Although the 2015 Amendment to the Electoral Act gave certain responsibilities to the chairman of INEC in terms of deployment of security agents, so that's the only recognition that INEC really should have a role to play, but that is not its primary responsibility. Other agencies have to make sure the areas of jurisdiction are well taken care of to enable INEC to do its job. So where there's challenges to that, it should work with those agencies to ensure that that's not done. Vote buying is bribery. There's nothing, it's inducement. And that is punishable under the normal laws, and it's also punishable under the Electoral Act. INEC has the responsibility to charge people to court, to prosecute, but it doesn't have a responsibility to investigate. It doesn't have the capabilities, or statutory responsibility to investigate those kind of things. You still have to fall back on the security agencies. So it has to work hand in hand. It's a multi-stakeholder approach. And I think the law envisages that, and that is the approach taken by INEC, taken by everybody, to ensure that these things are done. So our focus should not always be on anything related to election. It's the mechanics of election INEC should be concerned about. Let us register voters. Let us do constitutional delimitation of constituencies. Let us organize to print the ballot boxes. People go and vote and things like that. That is its core responsibilities. But all the things that impugn on its exercise and discharge of these functions and responsibilities, it should work with other agencies in ensuring that things are done smoothly.
You were once Director of Legal Services in INEC. Before you went to the States, and then you came back, became Director of International Cooperation, and later in terms of prosecution of electoral offenders, where is the Commission right now compared to when you were Director of Legal Services? What are the challenges you are having, and how do we overcome that challenge?
We could spend the whole day discussing that. First of all, historical insight is that INEC did not always have the responsibility of prosecuting electoral offenders. That used to lie with the normal agencies, the police and the respective ministries of justice. But we looked at it and said, look, in a lot of time, the political will always be there. We found that it was not hardly ever there. If an offence is committed in State A, for example, it's prosecuted by the police or the Attorney General or the Director of Public Prosecution of that state. Although it's a public officer, it's a civil servant, the DPP is, but the Attorney General is an appointee of the governor. If it's the party in power, the likelihood is that they will be hesitant, or they will be lackluster in the prosecution of such offenders where it favors, maybe it's their own thug or a person accused is sympathetic to that party, is a member of that party or sympathetic, it's a problem there. So in 2004, INEC submitted a bill to the National Assembly. Look, part of that bill is that INEC should be responsible for prosecuting electoral offenders. So it first came in 2006. That's when INEC was given that responsibility. And by the way, it doesn't take away the power of the Attorney General to enter a knowledge prosecute. What that means basically is that anytime he can decide, the Attorney General can say, I want to prosecute, I don't want to prosecute, or stop the prosecution at any time, at any stage. It happened in the Imo. There's an attempt in Imo when some alleged offenders were caught from somewhere in the southwest trying to go to Anambra, but went through Imo to try and posing as observers. But we believe that was to disrupt one of the elections, governorship election we had in Anambra a few years ago. INEC can and should prosecute, but it doesn't have power to investigate. So the power to arrest and investigate lies with other authorities. So unless and until those people do that, and then bring the case files to INEC to carry on from there, there's a problem. So this is one of the challenges. There are several, but this is one of the challenges. Furthermore, after election day, how many witnesses are ready to go to court, and the drudgery of going to court? The policemen, for example, sometimes security agents come from outside of the state where the election took place, come hundreds of miles away. I don't know how well funded they are. They will not they have issues of getting money to transport themselves, for logistics to come to court, for the policemen to get witnesses. The IPO might be from Sokoto and the election was in Manambra or Lagos or anywhere else. Signals may be sent, but to get to him takes a while. And then, what's the logistics of him getting there? What's the logistics of him getting witnesses who may be scattered? We use, INEC used to use university professors and lecturers, for example, and usually not those from the locale. They might be from the locale, they might not be. And then, how do you get these people done? All the logistics. So there are practical challenges to that initiative. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people have called for the establishment of an Electoral Offences Commission that will have power to arrest, to investigate, to prosecute, and will be well funded to ensure that it gives teeth to the letters of the law. That is why the importance of having an independent body. Some say we have 20 agents already. Maybe you strengthen an arm of the police or an existing security agency and give them that responsibility of doing that.
Okay. Now, you retired from public service as Director of Voter Education, Gender, Civil Society, Publicity. Up till now, if you go by the voter turnout in the last general election, which is about 30% on the average, we have never really been able to get 50% voter turnout. I don't know, maybe you can correct me on that, in any of the general elections or off-cycle elections. In fact, the concern of the Commission was that the last by-election held in December last year, particularly Lagos East Senatorial District election, you even have less than 10% voter turnout electing a senator of the Federal Republic. And yet I know the Commission does a lot of voter education. You invest so much resources. You even have your electoral half hour, and you also have press call. You issue statements. You go do jingles. You even have ambassadors and all of that. Why has it not led to improved voter education, voter turnout at elections?
Wow. I think a lot more research probably has to be done on the dwindling figures in terms of turnout. Recently we've not achieved 50%, but I think in the past that had actually been done. It's a tough question. There are many factors for that. I think voter education is one, obviously, but it's a multifaceted challenge, and I think we should take that approach to it. First of all, even the figures for voter turnout may in one way be misleading. The classic and way we compute voter turnout is based on the total number of registered voters. But some of us, and I fall into that school of thought, that you should base it on the total number of PVCs collected. When you collect your PVC, it shows your willingness possibly to want to vote. But there are many people who collect their PVC who don't even want to vote. It's the easiest and cheapest means of identification, recognized because of the fidelity of the database, recognized by everybody, by the banks and all institutions. If you want a driver's license, which is equally good, you have to know how to drive. And how much the percentage of Nigerians who know how to drive? Your grandmother in the village probably doesn't know how to drive. So, many people don't know how to drive. To get it, and you have to pay for it. To get your international passport, which is a standard means of identification, you have to go to an immigration center. You have to get captured, the process, and lots of documentation, which you don't need. It's not easily accessible, and you have to pay handsomely for it as well. So this is free. You go there at the time of registration and get it. There's some challenges about people getting it, especially in more recent times, but still, it's the easiest in terms of finance, in terms of ease of obtaining. So a lot of people who may not be interested in voting, voter education has a role to play in enlightening people the importance of voting. It's not just a question for the downtrodden, it's for the elites as well. A lot of people don't bother to register, and when they do register, they don't bother to vote. A lot of people register don't have an intention of voting, That's where voter education turns out. But some people put it down to what colloquially we term dividends of democracy. They don't see the dividends of democracy. So why vote? My vote doesn't count. I vote the man today. I won't see him for the next 3.5 years. It's only when it comes to campaign time that I'll see him. Well, that's the essence of it. The power is in your hands. The power is in your PVC. You can remove him if you're not satisfied. But sometimes say, I will remove this one. Next one comes. Next one comes. Next one comes. PDP was in power, the central government, for 16 years. For the past few years, we've had a different party. Are you satisfied with what they have done? People voted the PDP out. Now, if the APC is not doing as well as you want, you can vote them out. Some people say there are not too many alternatives. Something 90-something at one stage. So there are lots of alternatives. Some are not as viable in terms of likelihood of winning, but we don't know these things. If there are enough groundswell of people ready to support an alternative candidate from one of what you call the larger parties, then you'll have that. So there are lots of issues, and it's something we really have to take a very, very good look at. Everybody has a responsibility. The political class and the political parties are not doing enough in terms of voter education and voter mobilization. The ministries in charge, NOAA, Ministries of Information and things like that, government agencies have a lot more to do. CSOs have been doing their bit, quite a number are very good at that, but we can do a lot more in terms of that. The churches, the mosques, the religious organizations have been doing a lot, but they can do a lot more. I think, fortunately, the NSAS movement was I hope, a watershed, and people now realize the power. You know, look at the groundswell, look at the thing, the views focused on that, and so we can change things. And one of the ways of changing things, not just to go to the streets, and but on election day, mobilize, get people registered. On election day, let them come out, vote for people of their choice who they believe honestly will change things. And I think the higher the stakes, the more likelihood that people will turn out. That it affects you, it affects me in our everyday life. You know, in everything that we do. People don't realize that in everything that we do, schools, education, welfare, good roads, infrastructure, all these things are tied to your vote. And if you're not satisfied or you think somebody can do it better than those, by all means, vote for them.
Okay. Can you, before we go to issue of electoral reform, because I need to pick your brain on where we are and whether we are on track with that. But let's look at administrative reforms of the commission. Look at when you started. Walk us through how the commission has reformed itself. Let me give you an instance. There used to be political party monitoring and liaising department. Today it is called EPM, Election and Party Monitoring Department, because the Election Observation Unit has been merged with. So we have this merger, even VEP. You recall that it used to be several departments before the merge. Now let's look at the administrative reforms in terms of not only restructuring the department, but in terms of introduction of new ideas that have come true. Not necessarily, I'm not talking legal now, I'm talking institutional reforms that the commission has taken. Look at the issue of voter registration, how it has over the years from the OMR form down to now biometric and all of that. So walk us through how has the institutional reform of the electoral management body in Nigeria, how has it evolved and where do we stand right now?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. Many things rolled into it. By the way, OMR forms is biometric, by the way. Okay. It was that was the first attempt at doing biometric registration. Okay. The commission is a much changed place from when we first came in 1998. Let me illustrate that by an example. The chairman's office and secretary's office did not have a computer. In 1998, you had what they call a computer room. I think about 5-6 standalone computers. Wow. You know, and no local area network, no wide area network, nothing like that. Communication was by reception, they call it, some radio UHF communication, things like that. Incrementally, a lot of the things have improved incredibly, and administratively, every organization is organic. You change, you move, or you perish. And INEC is one of the most improved organizations, and one that has latched onto the benefits one can achieve from technology and everything else. There has been administrative restructuring. Just about every commission has tried to improve upon what they met with varied degrees of success. As I said, subsequently, there's a computer in almost every officer's desk, or quite a number of officers' desks, in every director, every commissioner, of course, chairman, several, and things like that. But the first attempts, the feeble attempts, Dr. Gobadia's commission did a lot. In terms of communication, Justice Akpata's commission tried to bring VSAT into it in terms of improving communications. Justice, after his demise, Dr. Gobadia, being a scientist and everything else, saw the benefits. He had a PhD in nuclear physics, I think it was, and then did a lot in terms of laying the foundations. For example, that was the first attempt at getting a biometric register using the OMR forms. Then we didn't have the resources to go for direct data capture that we subsequently did under Professor Maurice Iwu. A register was produced, a biometric register was produced, but we thought OMR forms was the easiest thing we could do at that stage. Unfortunately, it didn't have the photograph, but it's supposed to have your thumbprint. You recall that some people are using kernel and all sorts of things to try to deceive the scanners and everything else. It was a cumbersome mode, but it started and it produced a register, which not perfect, certainly not perfect, but a markup than the previous manual registers we used to have. He also brought in some management consultants to try and organize the structure of the commission, which Justice Akpata did not have enough time to do because he was appointed in August of 1998. Consultations, working on decrees, and then elections were held in December for the local government, and in between several elections were held, culminating in the presidential elections of February 1998. So there was really no time, and he died in 2000 while we were still going through the petitions and sorting things out. The commission subsequently improved a great deal administratively. Everybody tried to do a different thing. Departments were merged, units were merged, tried to streamline the structure of the commission, employed a lot more in terms of technology, capacity building, improving staff. Each commission has tried to really, concentrate on improving staff morale, staff capacity to deliver on the thing. Because one of the problems we had was that, look, a lot of the time, some staff were out of their depths. Best of intentions, quite integrity, but not competent enough to handle things that they should be in the modern. So look, there's a challenge there. How do we do it? Try and improve capacity of the staff. A lot has been done in that regard. And subsequently, each time committees are set up, a lot of their recommendations are implemented in trying to get position the commission in such a way that it can deliver on its mandate. And it's at the forefront of electoral reform. I think incrementally things have gotten a lot better. But we're still a public service institution. Pardon me, I keep saying we, but it's not out of my system completely.
You've been there 22 years.
A long time.
It will take a long time to win yourself
out of that one. Yes.
But now let's look at electoral reform. Administratively, INEC, as you call it, has done a lot, restructuring, merging, introducing different technological infusion. But a lot of people are calling for electoral reform, electoral offenses commission. People are calling for electronic voting. People are saying part of how we can overcome our challenge with our election is to even match the two election management bodies we have in Nigeria. Recall that the Justice Uwe's electoral reform, Presidential Committee on Electoral Reform, actually said that there should be the INEC should be, SIEC, State Independent Electoral Commission, should be integrated with INEC. Now, in your own, as somebody who has a very firm grip of law and then administration, where do you think things are before you left the public service? Where are we with the electoral reform agenda for the commission in 2021?
Electoral reform is always an ongoing process. In the light of new experiences, we try to see how well the law has held up and where it needs to be tweaked, where things need to be done. Where do I start from now? First of all, in terms of electoral reform, there's so much to be done. You made reference to ways and CX and measure of CX and INEC. forgetting that when INEC first came on board, its mandate included conduct of local government elections.
Yeah, that was 1998.
Up till 1999 May, that was its mandate. So the first local government election in 1998 was conducted by INEC. But again, it's really of not so much what INEC wants, what the country, federation as a whole wants. On the contrary, rather than concentrate things in the centre, we're talking of, apart from electoral reform, structural reform of the country. And federalism is one of the things we're talking about. Some people are saying it should be a confederation, but it's a discussion that's ongoing, and we should have maybe on a different scale and everything else. The same people calling for fiscal federalism cannot be calling for integration of institutions and making them. In America, local government, states, these are the people who conduct elections. In the UK, in Scandinavia, it is local government councils that conduct elections. But because of our history and where we are, we don't think that should be. Now, there are still some schools of thought, and if you follow the logic, they are probably on a stronger footing in terms of, look, in a true federalism, you should only conduct federal elections. So INEC should only conduct National Assembly elections and presidential elections. Some even states, all the others, even in America, the states that conduct even presidential elections. So, but basically, so where do we want? Is it what we want? Should CX be scrapped or merged with the commission? Because of our history as well, some people think that INEC is not so good, but at the same time, in its performance, it is 100 times better than what the CX have done. It's only in the CX controlled elections that one party will clear every seat available. When INEC conducted the 1998 elections, amazing demographics. When you look at it, amazing, really amazing. If you say that Cross River, I think you see 50-50. But a few months later, when the CX conducts elections, you see a moonslide, more than a landslide, really. So the results coming out of a lot of CX conducted elections haven't been so heartwarming to observers and commentators, and I think that's why they are saying they should conduct elections. I recall there's a senator that was about to be recalled, and he lambasted INEC publicly, saying INEC was doing this, working cohorts with his enemies and stuff like that. But about the same period, he went to the floor of the Senate and said that, look, scrap CX, they're useless. INEC should conduct all elections. But yet, this is an institution you are berated as saying and working cahoots with your enemies, quote unquote. But so it's just one of those, it's a paradox as it were. So we have to decide what we really want as a country. More decentralization, or should we hold the sex more accountable? And by the way, the independence of sex is guaranteed in the same way as INEC's independence is guaranteed. The mode of appointment is basically the same. Almost everything are identical, mirror image.
It's not. INEC from 2010 has been able to get enlisted on the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation, and then now draws its funding from first line charge on the consolidated revenue. But that is not same with CX, who are the mercy of the governors and the State House of Assembly in terms of funding. I think where you may be right on administrative independence in terms of funding funding. It's still a challenge. But let's move to the issue of electronic voting. People have said, oh, you don't even need to create, don't bother about creating additional polling unit. After all, NBA, Nigeria Bar Zero, to which you belong, in the last 3 elections has been using electronic voting. And people in their offices and homes are,
with how much success, as because we asked.
Yes, that's why I'm saying, as somebody who has wealth of experience and who was there when the commission was even interviewing some vendors last year, preparatory to getting the ban on the use of electronic voting machine lifted. That's section 52 of the Electoral.
It has long been lifted.
It has long been lifted.
6 years ago, 2015.
But we are being told that we are awaiting the amendment of the Electoral Act to get that done. Now, do you think electronic voting is the solution for Nigeria, and are we ripe for it?
I don't know whether I'm the person to answer that question. I think it's a question the average Nigerian ought to answer. But in answering that, it has to be informed. You mentioned the NBA, which I am a proud member of, for example. What you should also tell your viewers, is that each of those elections has been besought with controversies.
Yeah.
And for the first time in our history, when we started electronic voting, it resulted in litigation. Although lawyers going to court is not too surprising thing, but lawyers amongst themselves going to court, it's a
that's your second home.
it is at home. It is our farm, as we say, But there are controversies. So I say this not to bring down anything we have done. Incredibly, we've done a lot in terms of reforming the NBA, but because nothing is free of controversies, and of course, every member of the NBA is a lawyer, has gone to university, has gone to law school, and been called to the bar. So they are amongst the educated elite in this country. Yet you have those. Some people say maybe too much education is not too good for you. I don't know about that one, but you had controversies.
Yeah, too much education.
Yes, and as we speak, some people have been charged to court over interference in the election by the EFCC about this election. So there are challenges, no doubt. There's no magic wand. You just say technology and you wave it again, and that's that. Where do I start discussing this? There's so much in it. And let me perish the thought. First of all, in 2015, an amendment was made removing that so-called ban on the use of electronic voting machine.
There was no Electoral Act amendment in 2015.
Yes, sir.
It was not signed.
It was signed.
It was
signed.
2018. Okay.
I'm talking of
2018. In 2015.
In 2015. Yeah. So that so-called ban in Section 52 was actually lifted.
But not many people knew about
that.
That
knowledge is a different thing. It has been lifted. That's the law. So your knowledge of the law go to those who know. That's why you go. You don't sit down in your living room and just know that. Go and find out and consult a lawyer, a knowledgeable lawyer, and things like that. That ban was lifted, and subsequently people knew about it. But you see, it's more than just lifting the ban, because the Electoral Act is, generally speaking, a manual process, and apart from just lifting that ban, you have to amend so many sections of the act to get it up to speed on the deployment and use of technology. For example, even the bill being considered now as past second reading, I think it came up yesterday or was come up today in the House of Representatives, I think the third consideration, does not say specifically that you should do electronic voting. By the way, voting is a process. The election is a process. And INEC, right from 2000 or 2001 thereabouts, has been working towards an end in itself. In electronic voting machine, the deployment of electronic voting machine and use of technology, there are several things you have to do in place. We have an electronic register of voters. Since 2000, we're working on that one. That's more than 20 years. So it's a good thing. That has improved a great deal. Because you cannot do electronic voting without electronic register of voters. That's the foundation. Thereafter, you now talk of transmission, accreditation, first of all. Electronic accreditation of voters. INEC, with the use of a card reader, that's the first attempt. We had the hurdle that came across in the courts. And I think my personal view, the Supreme Court was right, because you had not amended the Act that time to make, you could use it, but it's not you cannot use the court of law to prove accreditation. You have to rely on the Act. So that's why the Act needed to be amended in terms of accreditation. So INEC was moving ahead. So you have that. Thereafter, you have the collation and transmission of results electronically. Voting, first of all, which is the component part. We've experimented with accreditation and transmission of results. That's why in the Edo election, for example, and Ondo, people with the Z-pad, people just looked and they could see results as they come in. That's part of the transmission of results, But the part that is missing is actually the voting itself. And it's part of what is being worked on. And in electronic voting, there are two things we should consider. One is the actual casting of the ballot by being physically present, which is the requirement of the bill and the Act as it stands now, being physically present. So you cannot, in the comforts of your home, vote. We have not gotten there yet. Where we'll get there, it's up to Nigeria. It's not up to me.
America is not doing electronic.
I was going to come to that. Absolutely, people don't realize that, and people keep saying this.
Accredited and still be processed.
There are very few countries. I cannot think of any robust, strong, long-lasting democracy that does electronic voting in terms of internet voting online. Scandinavia, some countries started electronic voting, went back to paper ballots. The Netherlands, for example. Germany has always used paper. The UK used paper. America has varied, depending on the states, have varied ways of doing things. But you still, apart from the advanced ballots, you still have to go to your polling unit and cast your votes. Maybe use a mechanical or electronic device and cast your cast your vote.
Now, the people are even saying, in terms of electronic transmission of results and even even vote. That we don't have the basic infrastructure to support that. That internet penetration in Nigeria is still about 60-65%. And if you want to do electronic transmission of results, or even the kind of internet voting that you are alluding to, we need to look at the infrastructure. And is it within the the mandate of the commission to go building that kind of infrastructure that will enable a seamless electronic voting system?
I think that throws more light on the issue and the allusion to, are we ready for it?
Yeah. So now let's come to the issue of our election petition. You are a lawyer. You are now involved in election petition. I don't know whether you were before you joined the commission in 1998, but now I know you handle some election petition. As somebody who is in the commission and now out of the commission, now involved in election petition, do you think we are there in terms of the rules, in terms of electoral justice adjudication process in Nigeria?
Before answering that, and pardon me, I didn't quite have the opportunity to provide an answer to your earlier question about the transmission and the robustness of the infrastructure. No, Electoral, as you well know, doesn't provide the infrastructure. But I've been working with the National Communications Commission and through the commission to the service providers and things like that. But that being the case, with the card reader, it can and it should work. You're right. I think it's higher than 62% penetration. I think it's higher in the 90s. But what kind of penetration? 2Gs? 2Gs is, you get almost 92%. So by the time you look at 4Gs and things, where you can transmit data and stuff like that, a lot heavier, then you don't have that kind of that kind of coverage. But we can get around it. There can be effective transmission of results. We can get around that one, because I carry that, for example, even when you go to the remotest villages that doesn't have a network, as you get closer to the more metropolis, it's designed in such a way that it will keep searching for network and it will just upload the results immediately. It gets closer.
You are no longer a member of the commission or staff of the commission, as it were. Is it true that the commission plans to use electronic voting in Anambra 2021?
Yes, it does. In fact, it plans to. Whether it will succeed is a different thing. Yeah, it plans to. It actually thought it could do that in Edo State and Ondo State, but things were not just time because of COVID and everything else. Just could not. But I think we're still working on using some kind of electronic voting, even if it's a pilot it or whatever. But yes, it's planning to. But
shouldn't the commission have used any of these by-election to force pilot before deploying in Anambra? That's if at all.
But you're a witness, you're a keen observer of the electoral process, and you've been involved. The same thing that was card reader. Probably better, but the first time, apart from simulated exercises, it was used in the presidential election. That is challenges. But you saw the revolutionary manner with this introduction and what it has done. I think it will pilot some smaller by-elections. The ideal thing will be for it to pilot those things. And I think the pilots are already going on. So
come back to my issue of election
justice. Yes,
and whether we are there with
like every other thing in terms of technology, in terms of technology in the elections, you talk about infrastructure and things like that. So you must always situate things within a larger society. So electoral justice is just an arm of justice. That's the justice delivery system that we considered, and then before you come to electoral justice, a subset of justice, generally speaking. So the same affliction affecting justice delivery in the wider society, of course, raise its head in the electoral justice system. But people complain. If you are involved in electoral justice, you now find out that cases don't move anymore. All the cases don't move. It's only election cases and electoral related cases. Not just because it's sui generis, that is part of it, but because of the time constraints put in the constitution on hearing of those things. So all pre-election cases, all election petitions have within the time. So and then the constitution of election petition tribunals, you remove judges from their states, bring them to other states. Their work suffers. All the work, all the commercial, criminal, all the other cases suffer. It gets to the Court of Appeal, they put everything aside and deal with these issues. Even other cases of life and death, have to deal with this issue because it's constitutionally mandated. It gets to the Supreme Court, you see that. So it's fast-tracked. Election-related cases are fast-tracked, whether pre-election or post-election, because the constitution was amended to include pre-election cases, was fast-tracked. So unless you have more judges, more time dedicated, more resources dedicated to the whole justice, we are going to have problems. So there are lots of complaints from other sectors. So yes, it's sui generis. It's much better than a lot of other arms of justice. But some people still feel that it can be improved upon. It's still expensive.
Do you think people feel that they get justice or they get judgment?
I don't know whether it's the feelings of people, perception. First of all, what is the reality? I think is the most important thing. When we get the reality right, the facts right, then we can work on perception. So a convicted man will probably tell you there's no justice in all this. A convicted man who has killed somebody will probably tell you there's no justice in all this. I don't know whether it is or not, but perception, and that's one of the bane of this issue we're discussing. Perception seems much stronger than reality. It shouldn't be so. Let's deal with the reality first. Let's do the objective test first before we come to the subjective.
Okay, as we wrap up, sir, the commission is about starting the voter access, enhancement of voter access, and creation of additional polling units.
It's not about starting; it keeps on doing it. It's an ongoing process. But the creation, yes,
creation of additional polling units.
Correct.
You recall that under Professor Atahiru Jega, this attempt was made. Additional 130,000 plus was to be created.
30,000. About roughly 30,000
to make the total 150,000 then.
Correct.
But it has to be suspended because of certain misconception in some quarters. Now the commission under Professor Mahmoud Yakubu has also taken up the gauntlet. Is now doing a wide range of consultation. It has met with civil society, met with the National Economic Council and all of that. Where do you think and how do you think the commission can avoid the pitfall of the past, which militated against accomplishment of this creation of additional polling units?
Well, I'm no longer spokesman for the commission, and I'm more independent now because I can speak from a vantage position of having been worked there and also been out now. As a background, it's important to note that people think elections are the most controversial things that the commission does. No, not at all. Elections, in my own reckoning, will be about third. Constituency delimitation, review and delimitation is probably the most controversial.
Yeah,
two, probably the creation of polling units. And three, maybe elections and I'm not even sure referendum and elections are more controversial, but in that hierarchy of controversies. So that's there. So polling units ranks between the sandwich between elections and constituency review and delimitation and stuff like that. I think the Mahmoud-led commission has started very well in this regard, in terms of wide-ranging consultations. What I'm not so sure of whether it has made up its mind about how it's going to go about it, what it's going to do. But it's good that you consult widely. It's very, very important to get the buy-in.
Voting points to polling units. At least that's the sense I got from the conversation.
I think you were there. Yes, it's a question of conversion. But that means these voting points have been created and the voting point settlements have been created.
Yes, voting points.
So it's just a conversion. It's a mechanical process.
Yeah.
Do you really need to consult if it's a mechanical process? Straightforward conversion. Or you are explaining. Are you explaining criteria and you set guidelines for it? Or you've made up your mind, this is what we are going to do, and you're going to explaining.
That's part of what is being put out there as possibility. Rather than, but the consultation is still on. I'm only.
Yeah, the consultation. What is the consultation on?
Oh, about creation of additional polling units.
Yes, but there's a methodology already. Conversion.
Okay. Anyway, we'll bring the spokesperson for the commission in one of subsequent editions.
Okay.
I want to appreciate you.
Thank you.
You said I shouldn't call you barista. It's Oluwole Osase Uzi Esquire. I like that name, Esquire. It's a pleasure to have you join us on the development focus with Jidojo on this 24th day of February 2021.
Thank you
very much. I wish you a very successful retirement and active public service in future. I know that you are not tired and you are still available for further public service. Maybe we'll see you as a national commissioner in the commission. Thank
you for having me.
Good people of a great nation. This is where we wrap up our development focus with Juju this morning. You can sponsor, you can advertise and sponsor this segment of This Morning on ITV. You are welcome to come discuss with our marketing department on how you can partner with us. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.